strong foundation for quality within the sector. It's really embedded into the heart of what we do. And as the Lighting Global program was really maturing, and we were, seeing our test methods published by the IEC, around that same time, we really started to see appliances come into the fore, and CLASP started developing some test methods for those products as well. So the evolution to VeraSol really represents a marriage of these two services to better serve the sector as a whole. Getting into the visual branding, as you can see, continuity was something that we were really striving for in creating this new brand. Lighting Global has a very high brand equity, and we wanted to maintain that as we transition to VeraSol. So here's just some illustrative collateral for the VeraSol brand on the left. You'll see it closely mirrors some of the publications that Lighting Global has put out. And finally, what are the benefits of evolving this program and combining all of these services into one? And they're really numerous. So as I mentioned, we will be publishing performance data on products on a single platform that will be very user-friendly and easy to search. We hope that in combining these two services for appliances and productive use with solar home systems and Pico Solar, we can serve the sector as a whole and engage a number of different institutions. Again, with the new brand and moving this program kind of outside of the umbrella of the World Bank Group, that allows for opportunities to be more flexible with the name, the logo mark, and branding. We also hope to foster a broader sense of ownership for the program across the sector. This may be diversifying the funding base. As I mentioned, we're also enabling a broad scope of products ranging from lighting all the way to appliances and productive use, and that product scope may grow in the future. And then finally, we hope to achieve greater operational efficiency. So CLASP and the Schatz Energy Research Center, like I said, have worked on both programs, the Lighting Global Quality Assurance Program and Quick Data. We will continue to do that under one program. So it is one website, one person you're emailing, one newsletter going out, and that will really, I think, help to create a more efficient program. So with that, I would like to turn everything over to Arnie and Elisa, and they will talk about some of the changes coming to the program.
While we're transferring, I just wanted to give a chance for us to, I wanted to recognize the members of the team. So anybody on the quality assurance team who's here, would you just stand up so people can see you? Great, thank you. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Lauren here, who's responsible for all of the work really that went behind the rebranding. So if you like what you see, you can thank her for that. Thank you, Lauren.
So in terms of some of what's coming up, this is maybe just a brief summary. One is IEC adoption of standards for off-grid solar products up to 350 watts. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about that in a subsequent slide. The second area is doing some work to decrease the time to complete product testing and verification. I'll spend a bit of time talking about that as well. I will freely acknowledge at this point that 2019 was not a great year from a time to complete testing, and I think manufacturers that went through that process know that, and we've heard that loud and clear. And so I want to spend a bit of time talking about that. There's also an expansion of the test laboratory network, really the marriage between equipped data and Lighting Global QA under VeraSol represents an expansion of the test lab network, because there's labs from both sides that are coming together under a single program. We'll spend a bit of time talking about test methods and quality assurance for new product and appliance types, and also expanded engagement with governments going forward. And so Elisa and I will tag team on all of these things. So when it comes to the standards for off-grid solar products up to 350 watts, this is something that we've been working on for probably close to 2 years, and we've gone through quite a bit of process in terms of stakeholder input across the sector, a number of discussions, and have also worked through the IEC process. We are almost at the end of that process. The IEC voted to approve the document in January, and we're now in the final editing stages moving towards publication. That typically takes a few months, and so we're anticipating publication of the document in likely in May or June. That's sort of my best guess. We're pushing them to go as quickly as they can. Once publication occurs, the VeraSol program will begin referencing those standards as the standards associated with the program. We will want to think through a transition from the current lighting global quality standards to the IEC standards, so that is as smooth as possible. And as usual within our program, we'll grandfather things, things that currently meet the standards and currently have validity. We'll maintain that until they need to be renewed, and it's only once they need to be renewed that they would need to meet the new standards, at least within our program. Governments that have adopted standards or that in the future adopt the IEC standards, I think, make their own decisions about how they want to manage that transition, but we are engaging with governments and encouraging a process that will allow for as smooth a transition as possible. But that transition, I think, is one that, as a sector, we need to think about very carefully, because things that happen in transition are often where bumps come up in the road. And so we're very interested in your input on that. We have lots of thoughts about it and are pretty focused on doing what we can to make it as smooth as possible. So as I said, this is a visual representation of that transition. It's also useful, it's important to note within this that the IEC version of the standard is a single document. Previously there were separate standards for pico-solar products 10 watts and below, and for products from 10 to 350 watts. All of that has been merged into a single standard for everything below 350 watts on the IEC side. In addition, all of you, I think, are familiar with the lighting global verification letters, which we will continue to have, but going forward they will be, or not going forward, after the transition, once we start referencing the new standards, we will have a jointly or a co-branded verification letter that will include both the VeraSol brand and the lighting global brand. So that's something that will be coming up as well. That's all I'll say on that process, but if there's interest to circle back to that during the discussion, that's one we can dig into further. I want to spend a couple of minutes now talking about off-grid solar product testing. As I mentioned earlier, the product testing and certification process in 2019 was slower than it had been in prior years. We had actually been on a trend where we had seen quite a bit of improvement over several years up to 2018 in terms of the time to complete testing, and 2019 really reversed that trend, and we are quite aware of that. I'm going to show some data in just a second, and I want to show this slide just to facilitate interpretation of those data. So we think of the time to complete, the time for certification to cover 3 phases. There's the time between sampling and the starting of the test, and we were able to track that within our systems. There's the time to complete laboratory testing, and then once the draft test report is completed, there's a time associated with reviewing the test report, making any corrections, and getting a cover letter and verification certificate finalized. And so, and of course, the total for that is the total time for testing. So the data that I'll show will be broken up into those 3 pieces so that you can see where things have been happening. So these data show, the line at the top shows the total time for testing by year. This is for PicoSolar products. We have similar data for solar home system kits, but the trends are fairly similar, and so I just wanted to use one category in order to show the trends. The total time for testing you can see by year going back to 2014. We'd seen some improvement up to 2018, and then a big jump in 2019. The red line below that, it shows the testing portion of the time, which is the majority of the time, and then the lines at the bottom. The blue line is the time between sampling and test start, and then the green line is the review, cover letter, and verification certificate. And so you can see that what happened in 2019 really was primarily associated with an increase in the testing time. The time for the review and issuing of the verification certificate has stayed pretty flat, and there was a little bit of an increase as well on the time between sampling and test start. I guess another thing to note is that towards the end of 2019, we did see a bit of improvement. The data for 2020 are just things that came in early this year, so it's a pretty small sample size, but we are seeing some improvement. And so that's a promising sign, but not definitive because we're pretty early in the year. As I said, the main delays were associated with product testing. Factors contributing to that included increased testing volume. As we noted, there's more companies coming to get their product certified, and labs need to ramp up in order to account for that. And so the increased testing volume was a contributing factor. The transition to a new set of test methods was a contributing factor. We moved to the 4th edition of the IEC test methods in late 2018, and so 2019 was a year where labs were getting used to using a new set of test methods, and that contributed. And then there was also just unfortunate staff turnover, which came just at the wrong time in conjunction with learning those new methods. So all of those things contributed. If you look at, this is the same data, but over a shorter time period and broken up by quarter. And so we're just looking from the 4th quarter of 2018 to showing what's come in early January. You can see that things really were particularly long for things where the test results came in the 4th quarter of 2019, which means they probably started several months before that. So it was things that were coming in from about April or so, where things were moving very slowly, and I think that we're, through quite a bit of effort, have gotten to a point where we're starting to see some improvement, but we're still not back to where we want to be in terms of the time to complete testing. We have been working very carefully or closely with labs to support them, both through training and through providing technical support in relationship to the new methods. Perhaps we didn't do as much as we should have, or didn't recognize the problem quite early enough, but we have been working quite hard, and I think are now starting to see the benefits of that in terms of the improvements we're seeing towards the end of the year. Key labs have also increased their staffing in relationship to this issue, so I think that's a positive contributing factor. So I would say some progress has been made, but there's still more that we need to do, and we're very focused on this issue. And again, this is another topic where we're very happy to either have a follow-up discussion at the end on this, or if people are interested in individual conversations, we're always happy to do that as well. I think with that, I'll pass things over to Elisa.
Great, thank you, Arnie. VeraSol coordinate a global network of independent test laboratory that have the equipment and training to really conduct the testing and also produce reliable test results. On the left-hand side, you have these 5 test laboratory that's formerly in the Lighting Global Test Lab Network, and I hope everyone is already pretty familiar with those 5 test labs. These labs will continue to provide the same level of service for testing PicoSolar and solar home system kits. So there will be not changes there. The VeraSol team, with the support with Africa Clean Energy Program, is actually support additional 5 test lab, and that's going to be set up in the sub-Saharan African region. We're currently going through this assessment phase to really understand where testing capacity is needed and where are the ideal location to set up these test lab. And so more information on where these test lab will be is forthcoming. We're also very happy to introduce the new test laboratory that's coming into the network for appliances in productive use. Currently, we're testing TV, fans, refrigerator, and solar water pumps in these 4 different test labs, and we're very glad to partner with these labs and bring them to the fold.
We have a really nice fact sheet on this if you want to take that home with you, and Riley has copies of those up here in the front.
And this is to just quickly show what's in the pipeline for some of the topic or issue that the VeraSol team is currently understand. It's currently under discussion and consideration for future program scope expansion. And this is really based on a lot of feedback that we've been hearing from the industry. We got inquiry from our QA pipeline asking about additional product, additional technology, whether or not those products can be included into the QA framework. And so this is a list of what we're currently thinking, and that includes the QA framework for a component-based system, which Arnie will talk about a little bit in the later slides. We're thinking about a test method for refrigerator, actually bringing some of those test methods into the IC technical committee. We're also exploring test method for solar street lights, which is also one of the products we receive quite a lot of demand. We're currently exploring quality standards for off-grid television and off-grid fans, and evaluating those products as a standalone appliances separate from the solar home system kit. We are also considering and doing some additional research on the qualification scheme for solar home system kits that includes refrigerator and kits that can produce AC power with AC outputs.
So I think back over to me. And so we have been working with a team on the development of a quality assurance framework for component-based solar home systems. I think there's broad recognition in the sector that the plug-and-play kits or complete kits are one business model, but there's certainly lots of companies operating in the sector that are working primarily from a component-based approach. Key elements of the framework include standards for components, such as the module, the battery, etc. Design guidelines, because if they're being assembled on a component basis, there's a need to assess the design and design practices. Technician qualifications, because the systems then have to be put together and installed, and you need to have qualified technicians doing that, as well as installation requirements. The framework is currently in use in Vanuatu as well as in Uganda. There are slight differences between the Vanuatu and the Uganda effort, but really the Uganda one builds on the Vanuatu program that was developed by World Bank originally. In Uganda, things are being used currently on a pilot basis and will be revised this year. The group that has been working on this, the prime contractor for this effort has been GSES of Australia, which was involved both in the Vanuatu effort but also in the Uganda effort. In the case of the work in Uganda, the Lighting Global team, now VeraSol, has been very involved in supporting that effort through our team at the Schatz Energy Research Center. And so that once that has been the pilot period has been completed, there'll be a revised version that will come out, and there's a plan to try and develop a more generic version of this that could be picked up easily by other programs and governments for use going forward. So that will be an asset and a resource that will be available. And I think special thanks really go to the World Bank and the Vanuatu program, as well as the effort in Uganda for leading the way on developing this work. I think now passing it over to Elisa.
Great. The global, as we said earlier, the VeraSol team actually worked with Global Leap Awards program very closely. The Global Leap Awards team developed off-grid refrigerator test method in 2017, and that was the first version. And after 2 rounds of Global Leap Awards competition, we actually learned quite a lot of how to test off-grid refrigerator, specifically for a variety of different type of off-grid refrigerator. We think that the version 2 of the Global Leap off-grid refrigerator test method is actually at a more mature stage right now. The test method currently includes a couple different parameters on energy performance, on quality, durability, and safety and consumer protection. We think there is benefit to drive alignment between how on-grid products are being tested and off-grid refrigerator. We're in this early discussion with the IEC SC59, which is the technical committee that's responsible for the IEC household refrigerator, number 622552. We're trying to present a case to IEC and really to identify a path or identify what are the main differences between the 2 test methods and trying to bring the off-grid refrigerator test method into integration with the current household refrigerator test method. In terms of government engagement, there are quite a lot of exciting activity that's coming up soon. And to really talk about the objective of like why we're engaging governments for. One is to really promote a global harmonized approach to product evaluation. And this means more streamlined testing costs for companies, make market entry a little bit easier. The other objective is helping government to use product standards to protect consumers. And that means create an enabling environment for high quality product to really thrive in the market and eliminate the low quality product from the market. There are a couple programs that are really supporting both of the objectives. The World Bank Lighting Global and African Clean Energy Program are both working on standard adoption and implementation of PicoSolar and solar home system kits. We're working very closely with these 2 programs to help, to push the standards into 14 different countries in sub-Saharan Africa. We are also in very close coordination with the ELA project, the Energy Efficiency Lighting Appliances, and also the African Union Commission in collaboration with the EU Technical Assistance Facility. Both these programs, well, for ELA, I think the objective is really for both on-grid product policy, but also for off-grid product policy. And so that covers lighting, but also appliances. For African Union Commission, they are currently creating a quality assurance framework, taking a continental approach for lighting, but also for appliances, TV, fans, refrigerators.
And maybe I could just add one note on those last 2. These are efforts that didn't originate with us, but they're things that we found out about. The people leading those efforts came to us and said, we know you know about test methods and standards for off-grid solar products. We need your help. So we're serving in kind of an advisory capacity on both of those projects to make sure that those objectives on the left-hand side are achieved in the COMESA region, which is the geographic scope of the EELA program, and in the whole continent of Africa, which is the scope of the last program there. Okay, so here's the list of potential discussion topics. What you see in the Slido app is a kind of abbreviated version of each of these topics. because we couldn't fit so many words on your smartphone screen. So I don't know if anyone has had a chance to take a look at them, but I'll walk through them one at a time. And if you're having trouble and you need to see the Slido instructions, just raise your hand and we can put those up on the screen. Okay, you guys are, oh, one person. Is that true? Or no, that's a picture being taken. Okay, great. So I'll just assume everybody has access to the poll. So the first topic is, for which additional product categories would test methods and or quality standards be valuable? Why? And what product attributes are important for that evaluation to take into account? The second is, what are the practical implications of the brand transition and the IEC adoption of quality standards? This relates to the branding of the verification letters, the specification sheets, the website on which the products are listed, continued recognition of Lighting Global quality verified products by governments, and so on. The third topic is, what opportunities does the transition to VeraSol open for product suppliers? This could include the use of the term certified. We've heard that that's something of interest to many companies. A different way of displaying the product data, i.e. in a tabular form. And the fourth topic is, what would be the value of introducing a product label? What kind of label are people interested in? And for what product categories might a label be useful? And labels can come in there are different types of labels. There are endorsement labels, which is a simple, typically just a single symbol of some sort indicating that a product meets certain standards. You can have an informational label, like a nutrition facts label or something that says these are the key parameters that people want to know about. You can have comparative labels like the energy label in Europe, for example, that allows for easy comparison along some important axis, some important dimension. We can talk about who owns and who would brand, how would these labels be branded. The fifth topic is about product documentation. How can the documentation that we issue for products today be improved to better meet the needs of suppliers and buyers and third parties? Sixth topic is, how can we measure the real value to consumers of the quality standards for standalone solar products? And also, separately but related to the standards, is certification to those standards. The seventh topic is, would it be helpful to allow companies to use the VeraSol mark in their marketing? And if so, how would companies like to use it? And are there any risks that we should be aware of and should foresee before permitting companies to do that? So, of course, we have 38 minutes left. So we're not going to talk about all 7 of these. So I encourage everyone to think about, just take 30 seconds or 60 seconds, think about what topics you would like to spend the next 38 minutes on. Maybe we only talk about 2. And if there's a lot of interest in 3 of them, maybe we can combine 2 of them. Because as you can see here, they're not all mutually exclusive. There's some similarities between them. So just vote for the top 3, for your top 3. When you're done, hit submit or post or whatever it says at the bottom there. And then we'll take a look at the results. Let's give people another 15 seconds to look at the topics. All right, maybe we can bring up the results and see. We won't close the poll just yet. Okay, only 13 people have weighed in, it looks like. I bet maybe everyone else is just happy to discuss whatever everyone else thinks would be good to discuss. That's fine. We're getting more interest in the first two. Not that those are the first two, they're just the ones of greatest interest. I think the order changes dynamically. Okay, so interestingly, those top two ones are closely related. We got a few more here. It looks like maybe we could have two topics. One which is about, kind of combines practical implications and, value to consumers just increased. Interesting. Okay, I think we should close it. And we should have two topics. Close that poll, please. One is, thank you. So one is going to be about the brand transition, the opportunities and the practical implications that are implied in that. And the other is about increasing product scope. What other products should we be developing quality standards for? And for that matter, maybe there are products for which we don't currently have test methods that you would like to see test methods for, because that's really the foundation for any quality assurance. How's that sound? All right, and how do you guys feel about the order of those two? Do you care?
I don't. I think we should just proceed so that we...
Okay, all right, let's do it.
Get into it.
So let's go into the first one of those two, which is the implications, the opportunities related to the brand transition. And we'll stick with that until, well, let's shoot for 15 minutes on that, and we'll probably run over a bit. So who wants to start? Ask a question, offer a comment. We have somebody there. Are there any mics out in the room?
Thanks. Oliver Knight, World Bank. I'm the lead on the Pakistan project, which is just about to start. 200,000 solar home systems in Sindh province. And we've adopted the IEC standard, or standards, essentially everything that you're about to probably publish. But we did have quite a long discussion with the government about branding, and particular, a bit of an analogy to the IFC kind of the historic branding around that. So I really welcome this. I think it will be really helpful for clients such as ours to have a more neutral brand like what you're kind of proposing. I had a question that came out of that, which is where are you going to be charging? So what if this will be kind of just free to access? I guess the specs and some of those things will be free, but there will obviously be bits of the service that are charged, probably more to the suppliers. The other thing I think will be very useful is as you get governments entering into this, we've had quite a few discussions around grants, subsidies, whatever you want to call it, and that's obviously what's happening under this project. As that starts to happen, when you're giving out grants, you're going to need to be, you can say to the suppliers, these are the products, these are the standards you need to be adopting, but then you're going to need to have some kind of field testing to ensure that those are actually the products that are being sold. And so something that I think will be really useful for us, and we're already talking about, is a simplified testing standard to ensure that the products actually being sold are the products that were certified in the lab, and are not some kind of cheat or whatever that could happen, and that is certainly possible in some of these places. So, and that means you're using labs that are not in your network, because they need to be labs that are potentially in the closest capital city. So if there's a third-party lab, something that's a simplified form of that can, where they can do that kind of simplified testing. Thanks.
Great. Thanks for your questions. So on the first question, what do we charge? So the program is primarily donor funded. However, we do charge a fee to companies that wish to get their products quality verified, and we will continue to do that. We overhauled our pricing for certification services in October of 2019, and we anticipate revising those prices annually going forward. But the simple answer is we do charge for the certification services. And in relation to your second question, or in response to your second question, we believe that it's important to test products both prior to market entry, as we do in our certification program, and also once the products are going into the marketplace. So we have a system of market surveillance that we conduct market check tests. We go into shops and observe products, and we encourage institutions such as yours and others to contact us if they do have a need to check on to verify that products that are part of their procurement program or what have you do meet the standards that they've been qualified to or certified to. So I encourage anyone who's in Oliver's position to get in touch with us, and we can discuss with you how I believe we can come to an arrangement that will ensure that those products get properly tested, and we can verify that the 10,000 or 100,000 units that are going into people's homes do meet the standards that they are supposed to be meeting. Other questions, comments about the transition? I'll mention while you're thinking that this isn't the only, as Arnie mentioned, everything that we do in this program, we invite stakeholder comment and in advance of making decisions and making changes. So some of the things you just saw there about, for example, the co-branding of the verification letter, we presented that as kind of a mock-up of a future verification letter. And that's our idea of how we can best serve the sector with verification letters. If you have different ideas, maybe you think that co-branding would be confusing, and if it's a VeraSol certificate to an IEC standard that the Lighting Global brand shouldn't be on there at all, please speak up, let us know. This is just like a tentative, a hypothetical for how we could proceed. And we're going to be having a couple of other stakeholder webinars in the coming weeks, because of course everyone who wants to weigh in on these things and understand what's going on can't be in this room right now. So we welcome your comments now, we welcome your comments later. Please let your colleagues know that, invite them to be part of this process too.
I'll just add one more thing in relationship to Oliver's note, which is that we also encourage programs that anticipate a real interest in a market surveillance dimension to build in some budget to address that. And that's something that we can also discuss in terms of what sorts of costs are involved, what might be involved in doing that, depending on what your objectives are and how much surveillance. And it'll also vary by country in terms of the logistics, et cetera. So that's something that we can certainly provide advice about, and we're happy to have those conversations. But being proactive about making sure you build those into program budgets from the start is really useful, so that by the time you get to that point, you have resources to proceed.
Any other questions or comments? Requests for a time of day for the webinar? Okay, we could move to the other topic if there are no other questions or comments. Okay, great. So the other topic is about an increased scope for quality assurance for off-grid solar. So just to quickly review, we have test methods for pico-solar products, SHS kits, off-grid fans, televisions, refrigerators, water pumps, and soon electric pressure cookers. We have quality standards for Pico Solar products and SHS kits. We have a draft, or let's say a pseudo or a half-baked quality standards. That's not a good way to say it. We have a document that gives some ideas about what quality standards for fans and televisions might look like. That was just published a week ago. And you can find a link to that on VeraSol, on the VeraSol website. We have a full-fledged certification program for solar home system kits and Pico Solar products. And what else? We have the beginnings of a QA framework for component-based solar home systems. And I don't think Arnie mentioned this, but our thinking on that is that it would be useful for certain elements of that QA framework to be incorporated into an IEC document, and thereby would be easy for other countries outside of Vanuatu and Uganda to pick up and run with. And then also we have, I don't know if you guys how familiar you are with the product listings and the spec sheets on the Lighting Global website, but we have a lot of data about products there. And we also have a lot of data about appliances on the Equip data website. But if you have comments about what kinds of data you'd like to see that aren't currently publicly available, speak up.
Additionally, it's interesting to hear if there are product categories that you think we should emphasize or de-emphasize. That's really useful feedback as well. So, there's a question there.
Somebody needs a mic.
Hi, I'm Heather Jacobus from Tetra Tech. One of the organizations that we work with, USAID program, is developing products that really straddle the line of these categories. Pumps that also power lights, that also power electric cookers and whatnot. How, as the products diversify in the market, how do you deal with multi-function systems? We're being talked about platforms, right? That you plug appliances into. Those platforms may be solar home systems. Those platforms may be, I don't know, something else. But as the market sort of begins to develop more energy platforms, how will you fold those into your quality regulations?
So I think there's always going to be things that we didn't anticipate in terms of categories, and so if there are things that are being developed where a company anticipates that it's not going to fit into our existing framework, we encourage companies to contact us early so that we have time to think about that and react to that need. So that's, I guess, one comment. So we've always encouraged that, and we've always done our best to respond to what the market needs. I think in terms of platforms, we've really historically focused a lot within what was historically the Lighting Global program on complete packaged kits, but as we've expanded into solar home systems, we've had to think about a range of different appliances that might be included in that. And so something with a water pump and lights and some other things in some ways is not conceptually different from that, although it might be a larger system than 350 watts. So there's not a reason that you couldn't imagine expanding to include something like that if it was a standardized package. So that's one approach, but we have to make sure that we've thought through for a given appliance type or equipment type how we include that within that framework. The other is certainly within a component-based approach, there's a lot of flexibility for putting different things together, and you just need to have a framework for design guidelines that allows you to think about a particular application type and what the design parameters should be. So I think that between a component-based approach and a packaged kit approach, you should be able to cover a pretty wide range of things, but it's always important to know which way the market is going, and the best way for that to happen is for you all to tell us which way you're going so that we can make sure we're prepared. Because there's an infinite number of combinations and an infinite number of appliances out there that might need to be incorporated, and it always takes a little bit of time to be ready to do that. Drew?
Hey, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Drew Corbin from Gogler. I'm interested to hear that there's a TV and fan standard in development. So I hear a few things about this and then the need for a standard for these things. You know, on one side, the TVs are perhaps the less robust part of a SHS kit that's sold with that appliance. On the other hand, a lot of the products are sold on pay-go, and the manufacturers are very much invested in the quality and durability. So, you know, I've heard some pay-go 2.0 distributors who would welcome a certification because it would, give them some assurance that it's of a quality, and some pay-go companies saying, we're doing a lot of tests on this. We work very hard to make sure it's quality. Having a certificate is just going to add cost and slow things down. So I'd be interested to hear, what you're thinking of in terms of developing it, and what problems you see and how a standard will fix it. Thanks.
Yeah, happy to take this question. And if I can have can you just click maybe two slides? I think we have one backup on TV and fan quality standards.
All right, pass it over so you can find it more easily.
Yes, thank you. And so this is just to provide some visual aid and clarification about what we're really thinking about for TV and fans quality standards. And so we all know that under the VeraSol or the current lighting global quality standards soon to be IEC, we're actually evaluating appliances within a context of solar home system, right? So it's about how many service or how many runtime that you can support for specific appliances. For the TV and fan quality standard, we're thinking about standalone products, right? And so it's a kind of different angle of evaluating these products. It's more focused on its individual performance, quality, durability, and safety in consumer protection. And so it's kind of coming from a different angle and probably would be serving a different segment of the market, right? It's about company distributor who are just looking for that one product to work with other systems. Or for a pay-go company who are just shopping in the market and trying to find one potential television or fans that can be slightly customized or work with their system. And so here are some of the things that we've been thinking about and trying to put it on the paper in terms of how we could evaluate these. And the aspect column that you can see in here is really not that different from the current principle that we're seeing in the lighting global quality standards or the soon-to-be IEC quality standards. It's really heavily focused on performance reporting, the truth in advertising, the durability, and quality and safety.
I guess the other thing to say is that, like a lot of things, we wouldn't move forward without a robust stakeholder engagement discussion. So the fact that something is available in an early stage draft doesn't mean that there's a foregone conclusion about how things will play out. And so we really encourage people to engage in those processes and to let us know, because really the idea here is that we're a demand-driven and a stakeholder-driven set of processes.
And I was going to say, in fact, it would be really great to hear from you all, like whether or not there's actual need for evaluating standalone appliances, right? We've been hearing certain feedback from certain market stakeholders, but it would be great to see if there's actually a demand for these type of framework.
And we have a kind of a stakeholder engagement program, if you will, underway over this current year. We're looking to reach out to a number of different types of stakeholders, including suppliers as well as institutions who might be looking to run programs to promote these off-grid appropriate appliances. So please, if you don't want to stand up and say anything now, that's fine. But do come and find us later, and we'll set up a time to talk, because we do want to hear from people what are the needs that they see or that they have for off-grid appropriate appliance evaluation. I see a question in the back.
Hi, Declan Murray, independent consultant. Just on that last point about stakeholders, I was wondering at what stage in the process, if ever, users are consulted regarding what sort of quality means to them and what sort of test they would like to see and things like that.
I can say that historically, in relationship to the standards for Pico Solar products and solar home systems, especially for Pico Solar products, we did a lot of consumer research to try and understand consumer perspectives in relationship to those standards. We haven't done that more recently with some of the revisions, but in the early development of those, there was quite a bit of I wouldn't call it consultation so much as consumer research, because you have to frame things in a way that allows you to capture input about what's important to consumers, not necessarily talk in terms of test methods and standards in order to capture that effectively. But we have done quite a bit of that, and I think to the degree that we have resources, it is quite useful to do that in relationship to other product categories going forward.
Yeah, and there was some research done last summer. I don't think the results have been published yet, that looked at Pico Solar products and SHS kits, I believe. And then there's also some research that CLASP does related to off-grid appliances. It's not focused narrowly on identifying the metrics that should be included in standards, but it does get at kind of what are consumers' experiences with off-grid appliances, and I think we could leverage that data and do additional follow-on work that's more narrowly targeted at what are the specific metrics that need to be considered within quality standards from a consumer's perspective. Yeah.
Hi, Oliver again. It's a little bit off the kind of things we're talking about, products, but I've been to a couple of the PAYGO demonstrations, and it occurs to me that it might be quite useful to have, maybe it's not a quality standard, I don't know what it would be called exactly, but some kind of standard on how those types of platforms should be designed and used, and what should happen with the data. It seems to me that this is an area that's it's growing quite rapidly, but of course, the more platforms you get, the more there is. It's a bit hard to control necessarily what's actually going on in the market, and also, to what extent do those talk to each other, or can the data outputs be consolidated? It's something I was asking in 2 of those sessions. So, not to be heavy-handed with it. I think it's good. Obviously, one wants to see the innovation in that area, but a question to you, whether you think it's an area that should be looked at from the perspective of VeraSol in general. It may not fit into kind of the neat boxes that you have already. And finally, just a comment. It's not in the 2 topics you wanted to talk about, but I personally think doing a product label would be really helpful. You've already got truth in advertising as a requirement. Just making that explicit and putting it into a standardized box on a standardized label box on every product seems to me to be something that would make it a lot easier for consumers to compare one product against another. So.
And that latter point, I think, is a really important one, and one that we've considered continuously since about 2008. And we've gone through lots of discussions about it. I think on the one hand, a label is incredibly valuable, and on the other hand, it's really expensive to maintain if you're trying to avoid counterfeiting, because if you end up with widespread counterfeiting, the label actually can do more harm than good. And so we've always wanted to have one, and we've always felt that we didn't have the resources in order to police it effectively. Or say that we wanted to have one is perhaps the wrong way of saying it. We've seen that there's potential value in having one, but we've also have been, I think, very realistic about how many resources you would need in order to do that on a global scale and to police it effectively. But this transition is an opportunity to rethink things, and so we always want to revisit those sorts of conversations and hear perspectives on it. So thanks for that comment.
Yeah. I guess that difficulty policing might be more applicable to an endorsement label, like the use of the mark. I think you could, hypothetically, you could have an informational label and standardize the way the key metrics are displayed without having the mark on it. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but it wouldn't raise those same issues, I think, about counterfeiting or misuse of the label. I mean, we currently, as Oliver said, we currently require products that are quality verified not to have anything in terms of a endorsement mark, that they're not allowed to use the Lighting Global mark. They can say in text that the product meets Lighting Global quality standards. And we do require that they report certain key performance parameters and have certain constraints or requirements related to how they do that. But we don't say you must do it like in a box and show them this way, with this exact wording.
I think PAYGO is a really interesting topic. We haven't delved into that, and I guess I think there is personally both the issues of data and privacy, as well as other aspects of the PAYGO approach, I think are really interesting ones to discuss in that way. Whether or not VeraSol is the right platform for that or someone else, I think is an open question, but I think those are all things that are useful to discuss. We haven't focused on that as a program to date.
Hi, Drew again. So yesterday we had a session on open solar, where we had a role-play debate between open and closed, and thinking of some of the benefits and risks to different stakeholders. And from that and kind of some of Google's other engagements over the last few months, we feel there is interest among a sufficient number of our members to move towards collaboration on such as a universal connector for the SHS kit and appliances and lights. We're exploring that and think it's interesting. And another area going beyond the connector is looking at the comms protocol, up to the kind of the PAYGO standard and key code generation software elements. And earlier today there was an announcement in the Expo from Angaza, Solaris, and Pagey that in the next few months they're going to be working towards interoperability. What that looks like in terms of, I imagine a base case would be that the data between these three providers would be, interoperable between them, and then whether it goes to a deeper level of the protocol alignment or not, I think is still to be figured out, but there is some discussions and movement in that direction.
questions, comments?
Hi, this is Mohammed from Bright Products. Interesting discussion here. I would just like to ask you, since you're moving to VeraSol and changing, having new things, will you be able to look at simplifying your test methods for your suppliers, such as avoiding retesting cost and consequences? One example for that is your energy calculation, energy service calculation, the charging time, for example. As per IEC, it's under the TMOT 50 degrees, but for sales and marketing people, that just goes like this. So will you be looking at simplifying this? Thanks.
So the test methods are, of course, an IEC document, and so we have to work through the IEC process. And the way that we do that, it really is, typically we'll start off with a stakeholder process within this industry, working closely with GOGLA to bring in comments about possible changes to test methods. And then once we've gone through that process, we'll then initiate the IEC process. And so, and we're also very open to just one-on-one dialogue with companies or other stakeholders who have input. And so I would really encourage engagement both through a formal stakeholder process, or if you have additional comments, just to reach out to us and provide that feedback and have that dialogue. We welcome that, and that's really what keeps the test methods and standards relevant and alive within the sector is through that kind of process. So I think we would have to sit down and talk with you and with others in much more detail to think through what are the pros and cons and just what could be done around that particular issue. So it's not that useful for us to just answer from the stage now, but let's have that dialogue and think through what could be possible. Another question from the back?
Hi everyone, this is Pierre from Greenlight. I'm not sure if it was already covered earlier. Apologies if I came a bit late. So my question is about standards related. Are there standards related to anti-tampering mechanisms that are already in place? And if not, do you think that could be an area of exploration for pay-as-you-go enabled products?
That's an interesting question. We do not have any requirements in relationship to anti-tampering. The main way that we as a program engage with anti-tampering is trying to figure out how to test complicated products that, because testing is of course a tampering process, very, very intrusive. And so we often have to work with companies in order to understand their anti-tampering mechanisms and to essentially find ways of disabling them so that we can test the product effectively. So our engagement has mainly been through that, like trying to figure out how do we successfully test products given the various anti-tampering approaches. I don't think we've ever thought of wanting to set a standard there, because it seems like that's part of the innovation process that companies go through as they're trying to think through how to best protect their devices. But we would be, I think, very open again to a conversation about whether or not there would be value or there's a need for something in relationship to that. We don't want to solve a problem that's not a problem. But if there is something there where we can add value, then we want to have that conversation.
That actually reminded me of something a few minutes ago when Drew was talking about interoperability. If it ever came to the point where there was some kind of standard that was adopted by much of the industry, standardized plug or something, and people agreed that it would be useful to have the binary marking on on the specification sheet that said, yes, this product is compatible with the standard or isn't, we could also consider adding that information to the specification sheet and, checking in the laboratory evaluation of the product that it does in fact conform with that standard, et cetera. So just, keep that in mind as the industry matures and develops additional standardization. That's an option. We're open to that.
I think we're coming up on time. I don't know if there's maybe one final question. Or if not, we can say thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, we do have one.
Thank you so much. I understand in the past, World Bank IFC had supported Tanzania Bureau of Standards to establish a lab test for picosolar. Can I know what is the status of that lab? And in the VeraSol now, do you have any plans to continue supporting that lab? And how can those close to that lab use it such that it reduces the cost of them having their products tested?
So it's certainly correct that we did work with it, or have worked with the Tanzania Bureau of Standards in developing that laboratory, and that laboratory continues to be operational. It's not formally within the Lighting Global or VeraSol test network at this time, and I think most of that is in relationship to the need to have an agreement between the laboratory and our program, which has taken time to get in place. There's also a need to upgrade the lab. The lab is currently capable of testing products to the 3rd edition of the IEC test methods, and we're now on to the 4th edition. So there's a need for some updating to be done there. We actually had a really productive conversation today with representatives from TBS, the Tanzania Bureau of Standards, and we're looking for ways of continuing that engagement and collaboration. We don't have all of the resources in place to do that, but we're very interested to see that happen, and so we're having that discussion.
Thank you, everyone. We have brochures. If you want to pick one up, we have a bunch of those in the room. And the fact sheet on test labs. We have a beautiful website with more information about the program. And of course, you can come up to any one of us if you have questions or comments afterwards.
Right. Thanks, everyone. We really appreciate the input.
Thank you.
Thank you.